Hello, good afternoon. Hope you're all well. Thank you for joining us. As always, just going to quickly do my checks, so that will take a few seconds, and then we get straight on to it. Let's just check. Yeah, we seem to be up and running now. Right, so as you can see, we've got a spoon in the vise, and we're ready to do some carving. So this design here, popular one that we do, and what happens at different times, we start to run a little bit low on stock, that sort of thing. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to bring the table a bit closer. Hello Aubrey, Borada. It's Prananda here, but where you are, Borada. Yeah, we've got some, this is a popular design that we do. Goes under the name of Eternal Bliss, but the eternity sign is it's a nice symbol to carve on the spoons, and it's got some nice meaning to it. So you got the idea of eternal love, eternal life, and interestingly, actually, with Aubrey joining us straight away there, of course, symbolism is quite important. So for yourself, I know there was certain symbolism that you've been thinking in for some ideas, and that's always significant, but good examples for how it can be quite a personal sort of thing. We've also got the carver. Good morning. Or good morning. Yeah, it's good morning for yourself. It was good speaking to you last week. It was great to see your workshop as well. That was fantastic to be able to actually see where everybody else is working, and the equipment, that sort of thing. Yeah, fantastic to be able to do. So yeah, the eternity sign, Celtic symbol, something that we enjoy working with a lot. If you haven't carved them before, if you haven't used Celtic symbols before, we've just as well, Thomas the Woodcarver's walked in.
Prananda, good afternoon.
Is it, for everybody else, it's Borada.
Oh, Borada, is it?
It's different parts of the world, see? So they've been wishing us a Borada, so we say Borada.
Right.
But you are right, it is Prananda here. Yeah, Celtic symbols, if you've never looked at them, if you've never carved them, good fun to carve, and they can have some nice meanings. So it's always good to have a little story in your work. And this one is a great one, the idea of eternal life, eternal love. And Burning Warrior, good morning. Good morning to you. I'm getting used to the different symbols as well. I thought it was yourself when I saw the colour of the symbol there. It's a very distinctive logo you've got, so quite clear when it pops up. So you can see we're just starting off with those stop cuts, building it up just like so. The wood we're using is actually one of my favourites, piece of oak. You may have noticed that I enjoy working with oak. It's got a bit of a reputation, oak, I suppose. A lot of people sort of avoid it and say that it's difficult to carve. The reason it's one of my favourites, I always find that it gives a nice clean finish. It's got a nice grain. I also think it gives you nice sharp cuts, nice clear cuts. I know your favourite is things like teak, but I like working in oak, yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit hard for me. It's a good timber for us. Because
quite a pure timber.
It's consistent.
It is, yeah.
In its colour and character.
That's right.
And obviously, selling on the internet, you know, we don't show every single spoon individually.
Well, no, you're right. There's an interesting point for anybody. You're spot on. Thomas the Woodcarver coming in there with his pearls of wisdom. Yeah, it's a good one because you could take a photo of it, and if you are selling, then because we make more than one Lovespoon with the oak, you get that consistency, and it's a popular choice. I don't know what it's like in other parts of the world, but in the UK, lighter coloured woods, I think people are happy with lighter coloured woods at the moment, up to like a mid-tone, and your oak then is a mid-tone, and I think in those sort of colours people are happy. At the moment here, the darker woods are a little bit less popular, aren't they?
Yeah.
So we generally find that we are, you know...
But also selling wise,
yeah,
you can... You explain on the internet that they're not going to get that particular spoon, that there will be a little bit of consistency in the colour and the character.
The carver's asking, how's the roof?
Or it's all sound now. The birds,
sorted.
have been kept out.
We've managed to patch it up.
We're going to build some bird boxes now because the ladies are complaining because
we're interrupting them, and we don't want to interrupt their nesting.
Some of the birds sort of
a bit grumpy with you.
Yeah.
And the Aubrey's saying about the naval symbolism. That's an interesting thing with the Lovespoon, something that we haven't really gone into much on the live stream, and that's the origins of the tradition. I was interested in speaking to yourselves because I know, for instance, the carver, you've done some scrimshaw. And of course, it was sailors that did scrimshaw, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And again, the Lovespoon, it was sailors who used to carve Lovespoons. So that is why you would see a lot of nautical themes when it comes to traditional Lovespoons. So you would see things like ships and anchors, ships' wheels, that sort of thing. I'll have to apologise as well because I have recovered, but I managed to pick up a little bit of a cold last week. So if I sound a little bit funny, it's the tail end of a cold, I'm afraid. Yeah, but going back to it, it's those nautical themes. The sailors, they were the ones that we link the tradition with. So it has got that link already, the naval sort of themes. That is why when it comes to Lovespoons, you will see things like the anchors, ships on the ocean, ships' wheels, all sorts. And it also then frees us up to bring in symbols that you'll come across all around the world. So for instance, one traditional symbol you'd see on a Lovespoon is a soul sign. And I think that actually comes from Egyptian mythology. It's like a comma, but it's a traditional Lovespoon symbol, which isn't something you'd really associate them with Wales. But sailors on their travels, they would have come across those symbols. Another part then with the tradition is whilst we use a lot of Celtic symbols, the Lovespoon is a Welsh tradition, but it's not a Celtic tradition. So we believe then that the Celtic symbols, they're more of a modern inclusion when it comes to the tradition. And there's different ideas as well. On early Lovespoons, you'd have seen examples, knives, forks, and spoons as well. And we get asked at different times, why a spoon? And our own thoughts on that are along the lines that spoons, they're used for mixing, for blending, bringing ingredients together. So it's that symbolism, it's that story, that message that you get in your work that we always think gives it an extra dimension. I got to say as well, shout out to the carver. We had a bit of a Skype call last Friday, which was fantastic. Great to see someone else's setup. I know I've seen some of the videos as well on the wood burning warrior, so I've seen your setup as well. It's always great for us to be able to see what carving you're doing, what things you're making, what sort of setup you've got when you're working. It's great to discuss as well ideas, to share ideas. So yeah, that was fantastic. And the highlight for me was to actually see some of the fantastic carvings that the carver's done. Next time we speak on Skype, hopefully Dad will be around as well, so Dad can see some. There was some beautiful owls, dude. There was there was a beautiful octopus, and a highlight as well for me was to see that you'd started working on some Lovespoons, which is fantastic because the more we can spread the Lovespoon tradition, more others get involved in it, the better known it will become, and it all helps it to survive and thrive. So you can see we're using these stop cuts. Same process as we always go through. We've been asked a couple of times in the week as well, the tools that we're working with, what are the gouges that we use, what do we recommend? I know most of you probably know by now, but we work in vintage gouges that we sharpen on a Tormek. So it's a good system for sharpening. And the reason we use the vintage gouges is the quality of the steel. You really do notice a difference. And this is why, as you can see with it, why I enjoy working in oak. You really do get nice clean cuts, nice pure cuts on it. It's a pleasure to be able to work with it. So again, we just reinforce that stop cut, cutting down further into the woods, and just to make sure that that stop cut is nice and clean. Just shaping a little bit as well. So as we go along, as we go through the process, there's a lot of things that I do and they're just sort of instinctive. So you'll see I use the inside cutting edge, the conventional way to use it, but I'll also then turn it round and I'll use that outside edge. So what I'll do is basically use the tool to suit yourself and to suit the carving that you're doing. I need to clean up the shop and getting up ready to do another pet portrait commission. It's a pleasure. Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah, now that's an interesting one because something I think generally for wood carvers, woodworkers, is something you're constantly doing. You're always thinking about tidying up, cleaning up, sorting out. So that's an ongoing battle. I think we're some of the most untidy wood carvers out there, but it's something that it is important. But we're always around dust and excuse me, mess and all sorts of different things. So we just had somebody on the telephone. Is there somebody coming in?
It's the delivery. It is.
Oh, the delivery looking for us. There we are. So yeah, we're always battling to try and keep our workshop tidy. We're always battling to try and sort things out. I'm afraid to say that quite often it seems that it's a bit of a losing battle. Now again, this part of the spoon, the little twist on the stem, that represents binding, growing together. So that's what you've got. All the different elements that you're putting together. It's that idea, eternal life, eternal love, the two hearts together, and then that binding as well. So when you design things, you're thinking of all those different elements and how they go together. Designing then as well, that is one of the most important parts of the process. Be interested to hear from some of yourselves for a little bit of input on this. We're always trying to think about the story and the message of a spoon. We always sort of try and think as well about little practical things. So if I give you a few examples, when we design a Lovespoon, let's have a design that would be a good example. If you get asked to design a spoon and you've got, for instance, a bird. So you've got a bird at the top. Now straight away you ask, well, why have you put the bird at the top? Well, I always think of birds sort of flying in the air, and let's say then you've got a fish and you put the fish below, you put the fish at the bottom. We're always sort of thinking on stuff like that, how it makes sense from a design point of view, because as I said, there are no rules or regs, but you try to make things work practically as well. So generally speaking, birds fly in the air and fish swim in the sea. So logically, when you design something, I always think it's preferable to say have the bird at the top and the fish at the bottom. What's your thoughts on that, Thomas Woodcarver?
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like, it's for instance, I like putting bells at the top of the design because
especially when you're designing something like that, you're thinking, depending on if it's, for instance, two people, one from Scotland, one from Wales. So you use the thistle and the daffodil, but you have to be careful that you don't put one above the other.
Yeah, so that's why. So if you didn't catch any of that, yeah, in terms of organising it, Dad was saying, you know, if you've got two countries, two nationalities that are being portrayed, what we would do is to put the two flowers, we would put them side by side. So you try to give them sort of parity, you know, they're together side by side. Sometimes what we do as well, I've been doing more recently, is to even put the two flowers and they join together with one stem. So you've got two separate flowers, but they're actually joined by their stems. Let's have a little look. I can see another comment on there. My friends thought I was crazy. I was so happy my husband got. Ah, brilliant! That's a great investment. That's my one of the ones we got here. We've got a. That sounds familiar. She's saying the wood burning warrior was saying that her friends thought she was mad because her husband bought her a vacuum cleaner, and she was delighted with it. Oh, right. That sounds like the sort of present that Dad would buy, to be honest with you. But yeah, really useful for around the workshop, because the one thing you can guarantee, as you'll all know, when you're working in wood, is that you're creating dust, you're creating mess and all that sort of thing as you're going along. You're always tidying up. It's an ongoing battle. So you can see what we've done. We've created that impression of it going under and over and under. So that's what you're doing, is creating that effect. As much as possible, I've been carving with the grain. That last little cut is always the one that we have to go across the grain. There's just no way of avoiding it. So across the grain, you try to just steal it a little bit to try and get it going with the grain to a degree. But yeah, that's something that you will find is that certain cuts, you just can't avoid it. You have to go across the grain. So there we are. So you'll see there's that one there, like so. And then what I will do to finish it off, that's how we would carve an eternity sign. But to make it more in keeping with my own style, I will bevel all of the edges. So we're just going to bevel those edges just like so. It's all happening here now. We just got a delivery's just turned up. And by the look of it, we've got a car pulling in as well. So on the one spoon I can so far, I've got an anchor at the top because it worked well. Yeah. Now that's another thing then, see? So what you've done, you put your anchor at the top. So we would preferably, I think that's where we've got to qualify ourselves, we would preferably put the anchor at the bottom. But we wouldn't sort of turn around and say, oh, you're doing the wrong thing, putting it at the top. If it works, it's artistic, you've got that creative license. If it works for your design that you need to have it at the top, then go for it. Don't worry about it. It's not that it's right or wrong. If it works for what you're doing, if it works for you, you put it where you think. It's just something to consider quite often, that, you know, when people are designing things, we see a lot of Lovespoons that are designed and we'll sort of look at them and think, well, why has it been done in that way? Because we can see another way that it would make sense. But we're all different and it's a subjective thing. So if it makes sense with your design, and if it makes sense with what you're doing, do what makes sense with yourself. So as you can hear, we've got the lorry backing up now. That's because we got some work, some practical work going on as well. We've just got somebody knocking at the door. 2 seconds. Dad! We've got a few things going on here at the same time. Yeah, so as you can see, we got the shape of that eternity sign. That's just coming on. I'm also going to now bevel around the edges We're going to bevel around the edges, just like so. Here we are. So we're beveling the edges just like so. And it's just to shape as we're going along. We're just shaping around the different parts of the design itself. Now I know I'm pretty sure I know what has just, I think, yeah. Just to explain what's happened, we got a gentleman just walked in, and I believe he's walked in with the spoon that he's working on at the moment. So we might be able to show you that as well. I'm going to move on, and I'm going to do a little bit of work on these hearts. So what we're going to be doing, we're just going to take a little bit of wood out just above the heart. There we are. I think I know what this is. Is it right if I show everybody? There we go. Gentleman's just walked in. There we are, and he's just brought in a spoon that he's been working on, and I believe he wants a little bit of help to continue it. So that's his progress. You've done very well there to first attempt, I think you said. There we go. So I'll put it. That's a fantastic effort for the first attempt, and to free the seeds. First time you tried the seed?
Yeah.
Wow.
More than I could chew.
Fantastic to be able to have done that. I remember it's very good actually. I can point this out. The first time I did a seed in a cage like that. Well, I know in America you call it a ball in a cage. Yeah, the first time I did it, the ball fell out. So you've done far better than myself because.
Shall I finish off the?
Well, I tell you what, if you want to do a little bit of what I'm going to do, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'll give that to Dad, and all he's going to do is to just do a little bit of work on the scroll saw. Perhaps if we get a chance later on the live stream, we can demonstrate. If you're happy for us to do, we can demonstrate. Just, I think what you've done there is fantastic. Just a little bit of tidying up. Be interested to know what everybody thinks.
The only thing with this one is the fact that the gentleman who's made it hasn't got the same facilities that we have.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, but what you've done there is fantastic.
Yeah.
And my preference, if I'm being honest, I would rather give you a bit of help to finish it yourself. Not on a live stream, but I'd rather do it that way. So because you've done so well with it, that it deserves for you to finish it.
But I still think we can do some work on. How much time have you?
Hopefully, it gives you an idea as well.
Right now, to be honest, I'm quite limited because I've got the university work to be getting on.
It's so it gives you an idea because we're running an open workshop. How we have people coming to us.
That's okay, but
I think as well. I think this gentleman. I think it was through YouTube that he found us. So you can see we're just working on these stop cuts around the top. Here we are.
A sort of before a ring kind of thing.
So I can carry on for. Okay, yeah, that's fine. There we are. So you can see we're just working on those stop cuts around the top. So we're just starting to work on the hearts. And again, I will. Usual style that I work in, we're doing as much carving as we can do in the one direction. We'll then turn it round so we can carve back in the other direction as well. Yeah, I agree with you. What you're saying there, the carver about the spoon. I think that for a first attempt, I think that's a fantastic effort, and I think he's done really well with it. We basically, what it is, I think the gentleman found us through our YouTube channel, and what he's asking is if we can finish that spoon off for him. My own preference would be to just give him a little bit of guidance to finish it off himself, because I think that he's nearly there with it, and it seems a shame. I always think it's much nicer if you can, if you can get it done yourself. It's another thing as well. He found us through, he'd been watching a few of our videos and realised that he's not far away from us and wanted some guidance and some help with it and was wanting us to finish it. But it's something that we always sort of try our best to do, is to help others who are interested in doing some carving, because as most of you know, it's a fantastic material and a fantastic process to get involved with. So you can see I'm beveling the edges. It's the same style that I usually use, trying to do as much carving with the spoon facing the one way. So because it's facing this direction, I can just bevel the edges in this direction. And then once I've done all of those cuts, we can turn it round in the vise and we'll cut it back in the opposite direction. So for as much work as you can do whilst it's facing the one way, turn it round in the vise and do your carving back in the other direction. One of our more popular designs, I've got to say as well, this is a popular one. How can I put it? Stateside. So we find that through the website that this is one that's quite popular for going out to North America, for the USA and Canada. So yeah, a popular design for that. So we're just working as well this twist on the stem. My style, so there's different things. There's carving, there's sort of doing things where you're doing your stop cuts and using your stop cuts. But as you know, my style, I like to bevel the edges and then sand them afterwards. But that, excuse me, that's not sort of something that needs to be done. It's just the way I like to do things. And this particular piece of oak then, again, this is locally sourced oak. So we've actually, this one here, we've been having a few problems getting hold of oak. The reason for that, it's basically lockdown and things like this. It's starting to get more tricky when it comes to certain woods. We've got our tree planting project out the back here, and we are starting, there are a few trees that were planted before we had the field. And we have managed to get a few branches off them. So hopefully, I think in 2 years' time, those will be seasoned and ready for us to do some work in. So that's our sort of plan, is to develop the number of trees we've got growing in the back, and to hopefully have a build up like in a cycle where we will be able to harvest some of the wood going forward. And of course, you don't need to cut a tree down to be able to source the wood. You can take a branch. So for instance, we have our fantastic local tree surgeon. He brings us in all sorts. And one wood that he's brought us in recently, and is one of my favourites for the colouring, is the yew. And that's beautiful. You get that contrast between the heartwood and the sapwood, that beautiful bright orange, as well as like a white colour. Fantastic. You'll see that with the different carvings that we've done. I always like interesting wood, interesting grains. Let's just check 2 seconds. It's the design I used for the anniversary spoon. Spot on, yeah, it is. That's the one that we're working on, but it's a popular one that we do. Yeah, I like wood that's got nice, interesting character to it. So oak falls into that category with its grain. The laburnum, the juniper and the yew, they all fall into that character because you get that contrast between the heartwood and the sapwood. There's other ones we enjoy. Fruit woods. We have some beautiful stuff sent to us by the carver. Some lovely different ones. With different cherries and as well, and apple, pear and plum. And then the things like the walnut and the mahogany as well. Now, over the last week, we've been working on a few different videos in terms of we've been working on a few hanging decoration ones. That's just been delayed a little bit. The reason it's been delayed is getting hold of the right hooks for hanging those decorations. But it's something that I haven't made before It was an idea that I came up with. We actually bought hangers for something different, and I realised that we could come up with some nice different hanging decorations. So I had to develop a few new designs. And what I did, I bought some hooks for using the hangers to hang stuff on, and the hooks that I bought, they're too big. So it's back to the drawing board. We're going to try a different. I've managed to find like an S sort of shaped hook. So we'll see how we get on. So we're just finishing off that button. Again, thinking of practical things. So you're not just thinking about the carving and the design. You've got to think about practical things. It's getting back to what Aubrey was saying, where he used the anchor at the top because he was going to use that to hang the spoon from. That is why we include that little button there. Whilst you could use the eternity sign to hang it on, just finishes it off nicely. And other things we're also always thinking of, you're thinking of strength. So we were talking to Aubrey last week about work that he's doing, and we were sort of discussing how to get enough strength into the design, because one thing you can find, you don't want to design something that is very brittle. Excuse me. So I'm always thinking, have we got enough strength in the design? So that's one key aspect that we're always looking at with wood carving. When you're working in wood, people will draw things, and for instance, they'll draw that with a point right to there, and then the wood going to the point. It would just break too easily. So you have to be thinking of sort of practical methods for retaining strength in the design. So that is why we put the eternity sign inside a framework, is to make sure that we've got the strength, the sufficient amount of strength to do our best to ensure that you're not going to have problems. If you've got fragile parts to your design, unfortunately, it's liable to break. So by using things like a framework, depends on your design. So for instance, other things that I got on the bench, we've got the rose there, and we've used that sort of piece over there, but we've got a nice thick piece of wood, so you're not too worried about the strength of it. Something like that one there with the hearts and the bells on, we've got strength because we've got solid pieces of wood. But that one there, little Christmas tree decoration, we put the nativity, protect it inside a framework. So you're always thinking strength. Have I got that strength in the design? Just little ideas that maybe you don't think of as you're designing. That's something that always comes to mind. We also do a little bit as well where we're designing and we're thinking about our own method. So for instance, because we hold things in a vise, you want an area ideally where it's holding on quite a large surface of whatever you're carving. So if you're doing something very delicate in terms of it goes to a point, that can be that can cause issues. So you're far better off put it inside a framework or something like that and protect it. Now, talking last week as well with the carver, one of the pieces of equipment we always recommend, and one of the pieces of equipment that we always feel is, how can I explain, very useful, and I think is a great investment for wood carvers, and that's the scroll saw, because it gives you natural contrast in your work before you start. So when you see me working on a spoon, we've already got light and shade in our design because we've scroll sawed out these gaps. So that helps us, and it saves us quite a bit of time if you're having to carve out certain shapes. And you see people doing things like drilling holes, drilling out certain things. If you're doing stuff like that, it helps you out to do the scroll sawing first of all. and you've got that natural then contrast in the design before you even get started. So you can see we're just working, just shaping a little bit, beveling those edges, finishing off the design. One thing you might notice, unfortunately, for some reason, my skin type, I tend to, at different times, if I'm sweating a bit, getting sweaty hands, I tend to take the oil. My skin tends to draw the oil. Not a problem for Dad. He doesn't have the same skin type. Doesn't happen for him. Those marks then, they can start coming off on your carving, which is not ideal. But there we are. That's something that can happen. So we're just finishing off around that outside of the heart. So in the background now, you'll be able to hear the drill. That's because Thomas the woodcarver is just working to finish off what that gentleman's brought in, just helping to tidy up just a few of the areas that needed a bit more finishing. But from what I was looking at, he's done a really good job. So we just got this one angle now. And what I would do from here, same as we often do, I would just do some shaping in terms of sanding. So some hand sanding, and then it would be on to the hand finishing. So 3 coats of shellac sanding sealer. That is how we would be finishing this one from here. And again, a little bit of beveling along the top. And that's how we hand carve an Eternal Bliss Lovespoon. The Lovespoon as well, as we mentioned before, a great one to get involved in because there's no rules, there's no regs. You can carve different designs, you can develop your own style. A lot of people as well, when they get involved with it, think that they have to stick to generic designs that they see on the internet and things like that. No, you don't. You can basically do whatever you want to. It's a lovely tradition, very open-ended. So, we just turn that round. I'm going to just sand where I can see. It's just where the oil has come off on my hands, and then from my hands it's transferred onto the wood. So we just take off a few of those marks, and then later on we're going to do some extra sanding. Check to see if I've missed anything on the comments. Hello Marcia, good to have you with us. Thank you all again for joining us. Oh, have I missed no, we haven't missed any others. There we go. Right, so from there, excuse me, one thing that I know we might end up working again on the other spoon if that comes back in before the end of the live stream. Bells. It's another carving that we often do, and it's one that we get asked about, how to carve bells. So again, different methods, different styles. This Lovespoon is relevant again in terms of when we get asked about the order that we do the carving. So as you can see, the first stop cuts that I do are for the hearts. So that gives us the top of our heart. So we're just shaping that just like so. And whatever we do on the one side of this design, we replicate on the other side of the design. Hope the tapping is not too annoying coming through there. It won't go on for too long. It's just why we're doing the stop cuts. So you can see we're just using that gouge. Instead of marking it out, we use the gouge. We use the shape of the gouge to mark it out for us. So that's the top of our hearts. Excuse me. Excuse me. Excuse me. So we've marked out the tops of our hearts, and now we go on to marking out the bottom of the bells. Because one thing we're going to use this area is to do the clapper on the bottom of the bells. So we just mark out on the one side, we then replicate it on the other side. And this design would be very popular for weddings and anniversaries. Those would be the two. We refer to it as celebration bells because, of course, you have the peal for the celebration. Brownsville, Texas. Wow, hello, Rita. Thank you for joining us. And we've got Minnesota. Fantastic. We're really grateful that you've all joined us, and we're really grateful for all the support that you give us on YouTube. It's fantastic to be able to share what we do. Hopefully some of the ideas and some of the methods, hopefully they're useful to you. In terms of, if any of you, I know a number of you have got quite a bit of experience with carving. I've seen some of your work, and you're all doing some really nice work. So yeah, keep it up. Keep doing the fantastic work. But if any of you watching are learning wood carving, a lot of it comes down to finding your own methods. So there's those basics where we do our stop cuts. So you can see on this one, we've done our stop cuts for the top of the hearts, the bottom of the bells, the top of the bells. And then you use those stop cuts as a barrier, and you're cutting into that barrier. Now this one, again, we're working in oak. It's basically because we've had a few sales. We've sold a few spoons in our online shop. So we're looking to replace that stock. This is basically sharing with you what is really what we do as a day job, making spoons for our online shop. And today, see, with the Lovespoon, there's not many of us. There's other methods quite often used with the Lovespoon. So there's not many of us actually hand carving Lovespoons here in Wales any longer. So a big part of what we're doing is to try and keep that alive then here in Wales. But for those of you who are tuning in and are interested in making your own Lovespoons, yeah, wherever you are in the world, have a go. It's a lovely tradition. It's a lovely way for working with wood. And because it's an open-ended tradition, you can include all sorts of symbols and ideas, and you can very much get creative with it, have your own style, and include it in your Lovespoon design. So I always think, yeah, it's a good way of developing as a wood carver is through the Lovespoon. And for ourselves here in Wales, the more we can spread the knowledge and the interest in the tradition, the better it is. So you can see, we've done the shaping on the outside of the bells. And what I find when we're doing the inside, I test it out. So I'll carve it in the same direction, but it's finding the correct way that the grain is running. So sometimes I have to carve it back the other way. Sometimes it'll carve okay in this direction. I think one thing we don't, that's carving fine in that direction. So we'll carve that in this direction. One thing we don't talk about enough is developing your, can I call it instincts? Where you work with the wood, and a lot of what you're doing is figuring out where we get in resistance, and so which is the correct way, which way you're going to work best with the wood. So I think if you spend more time with the wood, you get a feeling for it. So for instance, straight away, I'm looking at that grain and it's going this way. So if I carve that way, it's going to want to go off that way. So whilst I can see that, you test it out and see how it goes. And to be honest with you, that's not carving badly at all in this direction. And so that's what you do. You sort of test the wood out and try and find the way that it's going to work to its best. That's one of the good. Yeah, we are. Thank you, Marcia. Yeah, we are selling a few spoons. We've had the main thing that's sort of throughout this pandemic, the main thing that's kept us going is it's the online shop and things like the what we call the bespoke spoons, the one-off spoons. That's where we've been focused on, because give you a bit of background on our family workshop. Up until Our governments here, they locked us down in late March last year. And up until then, we would normally be having around about 10,000 visitors come into our workshop each year. So we used to have a lot of coach groups, that sort of things. And from all around the world, again, for a lot of people from a lot of your fellow countrymen and women. And we would be sharing the tradition, explaining what we do. So that's what we'd always done in our family workshop. But as soon as the pandemic happened, everything changed. And we went from having 10,000 visitors a year. Since then, last year we had it was around about 400 or 500 people in the workshop. And now this year, where we've been under different rules and regs, we've had less than 20 people in the workshop. So it's been quite an adjustment getting used to doing things differently. Where though we're sort of excited is because we started doing more. We've been doing videos and things on YouTube, but only in a small way for about 4 years. But last January, we had some people came in and filmed with us, and it gave me the idea. I thought, right, we should be doing more videos. We should be doing more demonstrating of what we do before we forget certain things that we do. And so we started making videos. And the nice thing about doing that, and it was only through the pandemic then we did more. The nice thing about doing that is that it's got us doing some projects that we hadn't done for a long time. So some of the things that we've made, including the doll's house, which is all finished, we hadn't made a doll's house for probably 25 years. So it's been good. There's been good things and bad things that have come out of these circumstances that we find ourselves in. But to make some stuff, get involved in making clocks again, it's been good. So you can see we've shaped above the hearts, we're going to shape above the bells, and now we're going to go on and just demonstrate how we very simply do the clapper on the bottom of the bell. And I'm hoping before I'm finished today that we'll be able to demonstrate a little bit of the work that Dad has done, just to try and finish off, because I think the gentleman, he basically wants us to finish the spoon off for him. As I say, not our preference. We would prefer to help him do it himself, because you can see he's put quite a bit of work into it. But we'll see what we can do in terms of helping him out. There we go. So you can see we've got a lot of the stop cuts done. One thing I do on this design as well, keeping in with that style, I just shape here just to put a little bit of a curve on it. Just adds an extra little feature on the design. We just shape it one side. Same again, whatever we do on the one side, we swap it over and we do the same on the other side. Apologies, as I said, if I'm a bit sniffy, but we're just recovering from a little cold that we caught. You see, we're just finishing off shaping that as we go. Just like so. So again, it's whatever we do with this design on the one side, we try to replicate it on the other side. Not exactly, because of course we're hand carving it, so we don't want it absolutely perfect, because it gives it that authentic sort of handmade look to it. There we are. Now what's happening, just as we're getting down to there, only on the one side here, we're just starting to go in the opposite direction to the grain there. There we are. Right. Now one little aspect of this design, as I mentioned earlier, you're always thinking about strength, and you're always thinking about strength in the work that we do. and retaining as much strength in the design as possible. So I leave the last cut, one of the last cuts I do is to separate, get a little bit of separation between the hearts. And the reason I leave that is because this is the most delicate part of the design here. Excuse me, and whilst I'm shaping the bells and things like that and doing some detail on the bells, if these hearts are still joined, they're still connected, it gives you that extra strength. So that's, if I free that, it just makes it a little bit more vulnerable to splitting, because we go, it's my style that doesn't help as well, because I do carve a little bit more deeply than, for instance, Dad does. But it's just to give us the maximum amount of strength possible in the design. So as you can see, we're just shaping in and around the bottom of the bells. We also just bevel. And I'm beveling that. There's two reasons for beveling that. It also gives us a little bit of extra distance, a little bit of extra depth for the next stage, which is going to be working on the clapper of the bell. There we go. So you're cutting that down like so. And then same on the other side. Matching it up as we go along. Just like so. So, what we do for the clapper then, we cut it down so we get a flat surface to work from. There we are. So we got our flat surface. And I want a clean stop cut. So it's basically, the clapper is going to be on a slightly different level to the outside of the bell. But afterwards, you'll see what we do. We're going to shape that. So same on the other side. Flattening down. Dropping it down to a different level. Just like so. There we go. And then reinforce a clean stop cut like so. And I just check if I've missed something there. And these videos so I learn how to do Celtic. Oh, good. Interesting move on. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Celtic work. Yeah, good. Yeah, Celtic.
Is there somebody?
I'm not sure. Celtic design and things like that is one of our favourite ones to do. Some of the symbols that I really like, the eternity sign and things like that, but I like the Celtic cross designs. And also there's a symbol for new beginnings. Also, we've seen it referred to as unconditional love. Those symbols, they're really nice. And there are different styles of Celtic knots. I really do recommend any wood carver do a bit of research on Celtic designs, because it's like opening yourself up to a whole new world. And the designs, they got fantastic meanings and they are beautifully designed. There we are. So what you can see, I've done a new stop cut by cutting down into the wood using a curved gouge. We've got a new stop cut built up by cutting down into the wood like so. There we are. So we've reinforced that stop cut. I then also adjust the depth either side. So we're adjusting the depth either side on the stop cut that we previously did, because afterwards now I'm just going to go in and around our stop cut that we've done for doing the clapper. So a little bit deeper into the woods, just like so. There we are. And so we're going to use that stop cut of the clapper to just get a little bit of extra depth down into the wood. And the idea is to bring out the clapper. That's the idea for, there we are. So we're just bringing that down and it just brings out the clapper. So I'll also just go back over where we're doing, I go back over the stop cut again, because we're trying to bring out that particular design. So again, same as we've done on the one side, we'll work on the other side, just like so. There we are. Now we will just, one thing for yourselves to just note, just a little splinter come there. So we'll sort that one out so you can see. There we are. So again, like that, just going round that stop cut, like so. All I'm going to do to get rid of where that's just flaked a little bit on the edge, we'll just shape a little bit that clapper, do the same on both sides, so it'll make it look as if that was how it was always meant to be. So it's just using any little things that have gone wrong and sorting them out. Now as well, to finish off the bell, there we are, just to finish it off, again we're shaping that one there. There we go. So just shaping the top of the bell. So you can see we're shaping that bell, and we do the same on this side. So we're just rounding it off. So it gives you, instead of having, and you will see this with the Lovespoons, you'll see quite often where they're like a flat, just where they've done just like a flat as a finish. With this, we'll end up with a nice rounded off shape, and afterwards we can do a little bit of sanding, so it makes it look more like a bell because it's nicely rounded. There we are. So that's rounded off there. A little bit on that side. On the other. I'm looking round on the bench. Let's see. I haven't got the right grade of sandpaper, but we'll have a go anyway. So, as I mentioned, we just shape that a little bit that side. And the other side, we match it up. We mentioned there's a little, it's flaked off a little bit here. So we're just going to round that down, just to take off where there was a little tiny splinter came up. Same on there. We're just shaping that down. And excuse me, let's see if I got a piece of sandpaper to sand it down a little bit. I'm hoping that this isn't too rough. Yeah, so that's going to shape it nicely. So you can see we're just shaping that bell just like so. What I will do is to use it more of a finishing sandpaper as well. So we're shaping that round like so. It's just giving you more of a finish, more of a rounded off finish. There we are. So we just keep shaping that round. Use a different bit of the sandpaper there because that was just catching a little bit. This afternoon so far we've had it all happening here. There we are. So we can shape that like so. And what I then do with the bells, once we've shaped them, afterwards we're going to decorate them. So we've gone through 2 different grades of sandpaper, a rougher one and a finer one. And with this one, so we got a little bit, just a few little stop cuts. Just finishing things off nicely, basically. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 on the one side. Just like so. There we are. And then we're going to do the same on the other side. So we're going to shape just like so. And it just adds a little bit of decoration. So if any of you are thinking of including a bell in a design, but something that we do quite often on Lovespoons. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll turn it round in the vise as well so you can all see what we've done on there. There you go. So you can see we've just shaped it. We put that clapper on the front, a little bit of decoration on the bells. And then to finish the Lovespoon, we just do some shaping of the hearts. So once we've shaped the hearts, we'll have finished the design off. How are you getting on there?
Not too bad.
Good, good.
Don't want to disturb.
No, not at all. So another thing, as we always mention, you're working with the grain, so you're cutting away from yourself. Both hands on the gouge. And if you mark it out with a vertical grain, you've got that extra strength in the design. And this then, when it comes to beveling the edges, I would bevel the edges. Dad, for instance, he leaves it without beveling the edges. So that comes down to sort of a personal style, a personal approach. There we go. Same on the other side, on the outsides. On the outsides, just like so. And the same on the outside of this one. And these are 2 symbols then together, popular on a Lovespoon. So a design, this one here, that we've been doing for many, many years. So we're just shaping on the insides and the outsides of the heart. Just to finish off the design. There we are. Hopefully that's been useful. We've had a bit of a busy afternoon here. There's been quite a lot going on in and around me. So hopefully that's been interesting. Hopefully it's been useful. We've had, as you know, we've had a gentleman come in with a spoon. We've had another gentleman just come in now with another piece of carving that he wanted us to look at. It's always a difficult thing when we're being asked to do, and for yourselves, if you get asked to look at work that other people have done and other people have started, that can be quite a tricky thing. I'll just check the comments on there. Piece of wood in the middle of is that just sitting? Right, yeah, Rita, that's a good question. The piece of wood here, basically that's our carving block, and the reason that is there is when we're hitting down on it, if I'm hitting that side, I would move the block to there. If I'm hitting that side, I would move it to there. It's basically the pressure, the force of where you're hitting, the work that you're doing, it goes through that carving block. Now, a lot of people ask us, why do we not have carving blocks the whole width? The problem is because we're doing spoons, every spoon is a different width. So we have two standard sizes, a narrower block, that one there if you can see it, and a wider block. And they're basically to take the force, to take the pressure for where you're hitting down on your carving. So when we're doing our stop cuts, that's where the sort of force where it goes through, it goes through that carving block. So if I put it over there and I line up here and hit down, that spoon is going to flip over in the vise, or you could split it or something like that. So that's the idea of that block, is to take the force of where we're actually carving. Yeah, going back to when working on other people's work and things like that, you've always got to be careful with it. And whilst we try and help people with different jobs, from what I could gather with what gentleman was asking Dad with it, Dad could see that there was a lot of pieces that needed carving that were cross grain. Excuse me. And the problem is that if the wood has been marked out incorrectly before you started, that can cause us problems, and yourselves when you're carving. So if you get asked to correct other people's work, have a good look at it before you actually take it on, because sometimes you can be getting yourself into trouble because of things they've done and how they've gone about it. So always have a good look for how it's been marked out and things like that, because you don't want to be doing a job and coming unstuck basically because of things that have been done before you even start working on it. But there we are. Hopefully that's useful. It's basically sharing with you what we do as a day job. Hopefully as well it gives you a little bit of an insight into, as we come out of lockdown, a little bit more how the workshop operates, where, you know, there were a few people coming in today and asking us for different jobs and helping with different things. If you've got any questions as well, feel free to ask them, get them into us. Anything that you're interested in. We've got some different videos that we're working on at the moment. We'll have our regular uploads. And also, all that's left for me to say is as always, thank you for supporting our YouTube channel, and thank you for joining us for our live stream. Hope you all have a good week, and we hope to be speaking to you again next week.